Good evening, everybody. So we'll be starting soon, within 5 to 10 minutes max. And also let me take this opportunity to invite everybody who's outside to please come into the hall and join us. Good evening, everybody. The final call to everybody who's still outside having tea or coffee, please come in. We are still waiting it out for you here. So, very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Times of India, I, Divya, welcome you all to the Right to Excellence Energy Summit 2023. Now, this summit is a half-day summit uniting policymakers, leaders, entrepreneurs, and energy experts to explore the transformative power of green energy. Now, the Right to movement, as we call it, is being championed by the Times of India, signifies a commitment to a future where sustainable energy is a fundamental right. Now, this summit delves into the past, present, and future of energy concerns, recognizing the profound impact of green energy on our lives. It's more than a technological shift. It's a societal evolution, shaping a future where clean energy is accessible to one and all. Esteemed speakers tonight will be sharing their insights, sparkling discussions that transcend statistics and also embrace the symbiotic relationship between progress and sustainability. Now, join us in this collective intellectual endeavor as we pave the way for a greener, more sustainable future. Welcome to the Energy Summit 2023, where ideas illuminate and conversations catalyze change. Now, it is with great honor and privilege that I welcome on stage Mr. Prasad Sanyal, Business Head, timesofindia.com, to set the tone of this summit and share the opening address.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to all of you at the Times of India Right to Energy Summit 2023. As we have gathered here to decode how renewable energy can power India's growth engine, one cannot help but marvel at how far we have come as a nation. Around the time of independence, we were said to be a power deficit nation, and now, 76 years later, we are one of the world's largest producers of renewable energy. This journey can only be described as both amazing and inspirational. India has overcome several challenges, including those of size and population, and dared to show the world that you can pursue development while at the same time significantly contribute to the fight against climate change. India has taken giant strides in the space of renewable energy and has set ambitious goals for the future. Today, at this summit, it is my privilege to be in the midst of several luminaries from this field of renewable energy who will share valuable insights on renewables and how far it can power our economic development. Furthermore, we hope to find innovative solutions and actionable strategies for the sustainable growth of India's renewable energy industry. I'm quite excited, and I'm sure that you are too. So let's start. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Mr. Sanyal, for your valuable thoughts. And now, for the keynote address, let me invite on stage Mr. Anil Razan, who's the Chairman, Energy and Environment Foundation, and former Secretary, Power Government of India. Mr. Razan brings a wealth of experience and insight to the stage. We welcome you, sir.
A very good evening to all the dignitaries and thinkers, and I should say the aspirational persons who are here today. Because this, the organizers were introducing is the Right to Excellence Summit, the Right to Energy Summit, and maybe also a right to green energy. Well, I think it's when you talk of excellence and you talk of energy, there are various E's which come into the whole picture. And I think that one of the E's that I have been talking around for right from the days that I was the Joint Secretary in the Government of India to some decades back, it is, I think there are two key mantras before we need energy. We need equity, that's what we are fighting for today, and we need efficiency. The other E which comes in, which is extremely crucial to a growing country, is economy. So virtually it is a play of E's. It is the fifth letter of the economy, and energy also is a five-letter word. Now let's talk straight. I am an aspirational person, but I like to be rooted to the ground and talk reality. It's good to have an aspiration, it's good to have a goal, but it's equally important to know where you stand and where you need to go and how you need to pick the wherewithal. And without the full cooperation of the entire system and the line of thinking, we cannot attain that goal. The system includes the citizen, it includes industry, it includes finance, it includes policymakers, the legislatures, and most important of all, the public representatives. Let's face it, broad facts. India is the world's most populous country. We've attained that distinction, overtaking China. We are, by and large, one of the world's fastest growing economies today, which is an extremely fortuitous situation. And all credit to the people and the government. But our per capita energy consumption and emissions are about 1/3 of the global average. We are largely a fossil fuel-based economy as we are urbanizing. When we were a rural economy, we were based on renewable energy. But as we began to urbanize, as we began to industrialize, we have, let's face it, we are largely a fossil fuel-based economy today. We have coal, oil, gas as major contributors, not only to electricity that we have around us, but also in mobility. We're trying to go to the other E, and that is electric. Everything electric. Now, what route we take, whether through renewable energy or through the hydrogen economy, it is a race of technology, it is a race of affordability and access. We are the world's largest democracy. That's a factor that we have to keep in mind. whatever decisions are taken in this country are taken with the consent of the people. It's not a totalitarian system like a neighboring country, and I name it, China, which has democracy, but not the way we know democracy. We have democracy right down to the grassroots level, where the people's voice comes into play. We have the world's probably largest number of cities and towns, but also cities and towns with bad air quality. Let's face it. The IEA studies, of which I happened to be a part almost a decade and a half back, did indicate that air quality was a major concern globally, and we did not figure too well in it. In fact, maybe with the growing industrialization, urbanization, we are a little worse off in terms of those rankings than we were a decade or two back. But that's a given. We are growing, and we must grow. Now, energy is essential for employment. It also has to be available equitably, in the sense that the population of the country, the citizenry, should be able to afford the use of that energy. Now, how much can the government or the state subsidize that commodity is something which is easy to say, but difficult to execute, because government needs finances, and finances come from taxation, and taxation comes from people. So affordability is a huge issue. But then clean air is also directly connected with global warming. And global warming, as you all know, with the COP going on right now, COP28, is a concern which is global, and India is a major player. In the recently concluded G20, which we had the privilege of hosting in this very city, there was, I should say, very fortuitously, a movement back in the right direction. That it is a common responsibility, but a differentiated responsibility. The principles of Kyoto are back, and we have to keep fighting for that. The richer nations must bear the cost and the burden of this transition. We have just begun to grow, and this transition must take place, but it must take place in an equitable manner. As I said, if this energy transition, particularly to renewable energy, has to come, we need to be extremely efficient in the use of energy. We need technology, we need research and development to develop those new technologies indigenously and not buy them. India has to be the mother of those technologies and not a mere buyer of those technologies. You need the finance for it. Now, when you say we need the technology, that means your expenditure on research and development as an economy and also as an industry sector has to be substantial. And that is where countries like Japan, Korea, Israel, Germany, they moved far ahead of us in the 75 years of our independence. Around the same time, they were at the same level, more or less. Today, they are far ahead, let's face it. Now, this is where I think we need to concentrate, that our industry has to spend on indigenous research and development. If our brains can go across to the most developed countries in the world and head those institutions, head those financial institutions. The head of the World Bank today is an Indian, a gentleman, Mr. Banga, whom I'm very proud to name, from my old college, in this very city. There are various others who are heading the best technologies across the world. Why not do it here? And we can do it. Rather than have this brain drain, let's retain the brains here, give them the opportunity, and build technology, and provide that technology to our population. What are our constraints? It's population, as I mentioned. The highest population in the world. We also have a land constraint. We may appear to be a large country, but the per capita availability of land is not very high. The other is, yes, solar and wind are the two renewable technologies that we are talking about, the new ones. But the sun doesn't remain 24 hours of the day. And the wind also does not blow 24 hours of the day. So these are factors which we have to factor in. So obviously, if you go in for these renewable technologies, you need storage. As was the case with hydropower, which was a renewable power. But you needed large reservoirs and dams to balance this energy system. Your demand for energy is not the same throughout the day and doesn't normally match with the production of energy. Coal-fired stations have a certain base load. Nuclear has a base load, but we did not expand nuclear. China has set up a huge nuclear base, and I think we need to expand that thoroughly to be able to take that icing of renewable energy on top. You need a strong base load capability. The studies of the Central Electricity Authority show that while the day peak load is being largely satisfied through the new renewables, but the night loads, when we all get into homes, we switch on lights, we need air conditioning because of the kind of cities and homes that we are living in today. That gap is difficult to fill, and we do not have solar energy at night, so you need storage. You need to develop that storage technology. But storage also comes at a cost, and there's a technology attached to it. So those search for those minerals, ownership of those minerals globally. Let's face it, China moved before us. They've gone and captured quite a few lithium sources across the world. We need to develop new technologies, maybe of resources, metals that we have. And finally, what is the talk of today is hydrogen. Everybody talks of the hydrogen economy, and that too with the various colors of hydrogen. Like the human race, there are various colors. And everybody talks of green hydrogen. Green hydrogen, again, will come through electricity, electrolysis, essentially. Hydrogen as a fuel was being talked about when I was trying to study global warming in the year 1994. It's taken almost 3 decades to reach this point that we are talking about its implementation. Now, the way cities are growing, We're growing vertically. You need lifts. You need water pumping. So these are air conditioning. As you have more and more banking online, you need constant electricity. And as I mentioned, more mobility means more fuels. And cutting down forests and cutting down trees is a price that we're already paying. Because these are the carbon sinks that we are cutting down. And then we are complaining of global warming. We have to reverse fossil fuel growth. We have to change our energy mix. These are the tasks before us. We have to create and encourage a circular economy. Circular economy in the sense that I have an idea that when you plan any product, you've got to see what is its entire life cycle environmental impact and its safe restitution back in nature. That is the true cost of a new technology, a new product, or a new energy source. Habitats have to be as energy neutral as possible. Some decades back, we tried to reorient our architecture laws, but nobody's really taken that seriously. Air circulation. Where will we find all the land for setting up these solar panels? I think the fascia of our buildings, which we are plastering with glass, will need to have solar panels and other such devices. Vehicles are moving. They will need to use wind energy. Taxation by the government has to be friendly towards such circular economy products, such energy efficient products, so that the entire fixation of technology investors is towards this kind of a system where we leave this habitat more habitable for our future generations. And at the end of it, we get back to the old system that polluter pays. Whoever pollutes must pay the price. We're already paying the price of global warming. I'm a Delhi-born boy. I've never seen such a warm winter. And just 2 days to go before I turn 75, as old as the nation, a little more, hopefully. But it's hotter, and it's getting hotter. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Mr. Razdan, for gracing us today with your presence and sharing these varied and very deep insights. One takeaway from your speech is, of course, that India needs to be the mother of all technologies, and I'm sure that we are well on our way to fulfill that vision. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we embark on this journey of exploration into the future of renewable energy in India, it is fitting that we begin with a panel discussion that delves into the intricacies and the possibilities that lie ahead. Our esteemed panelists, each a luminary in their respective fields, will unravel the dynamics of the future of renewable energy in India, from policy perspectives to technological advancements, economic considerations to environmental impacts. This discussion promises to be a comprehensive exploration of the opportunities and challenges that define the roadmap ahead. So now calling upon stage Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, President of Business Development, Wari Renewable Technologies Limited. Mr. Subramaniam Pulipaka, CEO, National Solar Energy Federation of India. And Mohammad Saif, Partner, Power and Utilities, EVA India. Also, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Sushant Mehta, senior journalist, to chair the session. Off to you, gentlemen.
I know it's a little bit chilly, but can we have a huge round of applause before we start this panel discussion? Thank you, everyone. Okay, Mr. Agarwal, I'm going to start with you. आपने तीन चीज़ मुझे बताई. Policy थी उसमें, infrastructure, it was infrastructure as well. I just want to understand, we have a target of 500 gigawatts of renewable energy till 2030. That's our target. Can we achieve it?
Before we begin, I would like to congratulate Times of India for this excellent initiative and for having me here today. Coming back to your question of achieving 500 gigawatt, I think all of us in the industry, there was first target announced by the government was around 300 gigawatt a few years back. And at that point of time, it looked like a daunting task. We used to ask, kaise hoga? Impossible hai. And today, when I'm sitting here, 500 looks imminently achievable. It's not a pipe dream anymore. So the only thing is that what we have gained in last 10 years, in 1 decade in terms of renewable energy capacity addition, in terms of policy framework, and in terms of financing. So that has made all the difference. Today we have about 180 gigawatt of capacity, and with 6 years to go, 500 is achievable, but we need these three pillars to work in sync: the policy, technology, and infrastructure.
Right. Mr. Saif, as he said, infrastructure, policy, and technology, all three go hand in hand, obviously. Yeah. One more? You want to add one more?
Thank you very much, first of all, to TOI for, hosting me and hosting this conference, which actually is one of the major things that I look forward across sectors. Just to add to what Rajiv said, I think finance, again, is one of the major ingredients to this enormous target, which I also feel is literally achievable. But yes, when we have to look at, someone has to fund the entire infrastructure. So while all the three things are in place, you also need good cheap finance, which there are a lot of institutions in the country which are giving. But we also have to see that while larger business houses are easily getting such finance when it comes to renewable, it is time to go to the next level and look at MSMEs, domestic retailers, small shopkeepers. Can they, shift to renewable in some way? That is where the financing needs to be strengthened. So just to add to what Rajiv said, green financing is another of the fourth ingredient that I'll call. The fourth.
I look at financing more as like for big corporates like investing in renewable, because that's the future. So I was trying to understand with Mr. Agarwal also, and please feel free to step in, that 500 gigawatts of electricity, 10 years down the line, what we are trying to say is that 50% of your electric load is going to be on the shoulders of renewable energy, right? And then you've got that goal of 2070, where you are going to shift to entirely to renewable energy. Please feel free to add in. This goal, as I'm saying, that 50%, he's saying it's achievable. Mr. Saif spoke about financing. I'm also talking about investing in the future with big corporates. Your opening comments.
I think, we all agree that it is 100% achievable, and unanimous consent is on that. But I think we have to look at it from three different perspectives. One, on the generation side; two, on the transition; three, on the consumption. On the generation side, both of them have mentioned today, we have installed 73,150 megawatt as we speak of solar. We need to install another 207.05 gigawatt. That is like a strike rate of 40 gigawatt every year from now, and we are right on track. Just this quarter, we have bid 15 gigawatt of worth solar. On the transmission side, we should understand there is no transition without transmission. India is today the largest or the home to one of the largest evacuation networks for renewable energy. Almost 98,673 square circuit kilometers of dedicated evacuation has been installed only for solar, and it's still going to increase more. So I think that is also going to play a very important role. Third, of course, is consumption patterns and all, where a lot of initiatives have been taken by the government. On the investment side, on a very conservative note, if I add every particular element, not only solar, wind, transmission, storage, like Mr. Rajdan was mentioning, we would need roughly around 2,50,000 crores before 2030. Is it possible? It is. How can we say it is possible? Last 7 years, our solar capacity increased 23 times. 23. We are the largest solar growing market today in the world.
Wow.
We are number 1 on the attractiveness index. So mobilizing investments and if to conclude, Indian RE sector is one of the few sectors permitted by the government for 100% RE, for 100% FDI. So yeah, I mean the ecosystem is there. We are the place where every investor doesn't want to miss an opportunity. So I'm sure we will be able to mobilize that through various aspects with direct financing from sovereign funds and InvITs and green bonds and all kind of instruments that are available today.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about the solar power revolution, you know. Is there going to be a day in India where every household is going to have a solar panel? And how soon can we achieve that goal?
That will be really a great day. Just to give you an example, in November, Portugal, a country, the whole country ran on renewable energy for 15 days. Of course, they managed their base load by exporting certain power to Portugal. But again, it comes back to the infrastructure of having one grid, one nation, or in their case, one grid across Europe.
So 15 days, sorry to cut you, but 15 days that country, Portugal, although smaller in size compared to India, much smaller, but it was running completely on renewable energy.
And we are far, far, far from there. That is where, again, it's a combination of technology and infrastructure, which he was also speaking about, the power evacuation infrastructure, the smart grid system, the management system, the way our discoms and transcos are operating, all that needs to get to the next level to achieve that.
I think today as a country, last 7 years we have spent on growth. Like I said, 23 times we've increased from 3 to 672 now. The next 7 years we will be focusing on the spread. Last month there is a new notification on RPO, which is renewable purchase obligation, which mandates at least 4.5% of the total procurement to be coming from DRE, distributed renewable energy. So to rephrase your question, we'll not only have at least one rooftop on every house, we should have one panel on every solar farm. We should have one panel near every highway. We should have one panel on every carport. And we should have one panel on every reservoir and one panel on every arid end. That is when we'll achieve that particular target.
Okay, but Mr. Saif, storage is a real problem, isn't it?
Correct. I think before that, just to complement what these two gentlemen just mentioned, one major thing is we have to relook at the targets that we set ourselves when we talk about clean transition, net zero, or solar. So while we all would love to have a panel everywhere, I mean, whatever is possible, but how can we do that? Can we relook at the targets as was correctly mentioned? Can we as a country which is fourth globally in terms of energy consumption, and as per IEA will be surpassing EU, which is third currently, by 2030 in terms of energy consumption. Portugal is a small part. Can we run even for 15 minutes, which is or 5 minutes, the smallest slot for energy trading, on 100% RE? Can we have municipalities which are ranked as per their emissions, as per their initiatives? Can we have green economic zones in line with SEZs? So if we have those targets set, I think then what you said is possible. Coming back to that, what you asked, storage.
I'm coming to storage. One thing that you said, and I'm fascinated by this because I was having this discussion with Mr. Agarwal also. Let's understand this like a 5-year-old. So let's say you achieve 500 gigawatts by 2030 of renewable energy. उससे कितने दिन देश चल सकता है बिजली पे? जैसे आपने बोला कि even 15 minutes it won't.
That's a very valid point.
So because we want to understand that okay, you've converted to renewable energy, but
correct. I am about
please explain.
Allowed to speak in Hindi also, right? So when you talk about a state or a country's journey of using energy, there will always be a time when the energy consumption will peak. If you look at US, the electricity demand there is always hovering plus minus 2% of the 210 level, which means it has peaked. So to answer your question, we still do not know when we are going to peak because we are growing economically. We are also, adding renewables in the process. But this 500 thing is going to contribute significantly because at that time, we would also be nearing our peak. Only then, once we have peaked, we can think of net zero. That is the reason why India has not gone on the pressure of 250 and took to 2070 because of the unique state that we are globally, growing also economically and then adding things also.
So, yeah, I would like to add just one point to that. Mr. Rajdan also spoke about our energy mix. So, today if we look at our energy mix, that is the generation and uses of the electricity, renewable is about less than 25%. So, bulk of our energy is coming from the old large hydro capacity and primarily from coal. With this 500 gigawatt coal, at current levels of consumption, probably we will be 50-50. But I am sure with the EVs adoption, with all the energy demand which is coming up, our energy demand, our consumption, our peak load by 2030 will also probably go up. I don't know by how much, 10%, 20%, 30%, we don't know. But again, despite doing this 500 gigawatt, at best we are going to achieve 50% in our energy mix.
So if I may add, I mean, the electrical engineer in me is tempted to take a board and draw the demand response curve. But I think today we have to look at it from two different angles. 1 gigawatt of solar might produce 4.24 gigawatt hour of energy, Indian average. And 1 gigawatt of thermal at 50% PLF will give us 12 gigawatt hour of energy, something like that. So storage becomes an important part to answer your particular question. Otherwise, my sun today, unfortunately, is available only from morning to evening, and my solar hours are only 6 hours. Wind in our country is available only 3 to 4 months a year in wind hotspots. In other places, it is very less. So to accommodate that, we need an integrated approach to the grid, which is where your storage questions comes into picture. And let me give you an example of what's happening today. Today, we have revolutionized as a country the way we look at renewable energy. Until 2022 September, we were looking at bids which are purely solar, purely wind. Today we have something called as FDRE, which is firm, dispatchable, renewable energy. Today the bids are designed and constructed in such a way that you are at your liberty to install any amount of solar or wind or wind and any storage, battery, pump, whatever storage you want. But you are responsible for giving X amount of power during the peak sessions and Y during off-peak. So today, our RE bids, and I'm very proud to say this, that we are now with contention or in contention with the conventional power, and we are not only giving round the clock, but we are giving reliable, firm and dispatchable power, and that is where storage will come and play an important role.
But storage, very expensive also at the moment and crucial for this shift to renewable energy.
A decade back, same situation was for solar panels also. In fact, if you look, wind came much before solar in India, but the way it has revolutionized, currently solar is obviously the highest in terms of renewable capacity, almost. So wind would be somewhere around 62-63% of the solar installed capacity. So with the amount of thrust that's going on storage across the world, what we have analyzed, the trends show that the prices are coming. The parity would also come very soon, very soon. And you've seen the PLI's incentives that the government is giving on domestic manufacturing. So things are in motion, but yes, it will come soon.
Strengthening domestic supply chain is one of the reasons why I am also very hopeful about decreasing prices, and I really agree with Mr. Saif that when we started solar, we were at a higher price, almost 9 times than where we are today, but in 6 years we came down. But for storage, will take lesser time. 3 things that the government has done along with the sector support. One, of course, we have now identified our own critical minerals. Last week on Thursday, the bid is out. Second, we have 2 PLIs already and 1 more PLI is coming up. Third, we are now not doing it the developed nations way or the Western way. we have understood that we are a country with our own ambitions and our own requirements and our own resources. What can we do which will suit our requirements? So if you see our storage proliferation, it is not just battery energy storage with all lithium ions and all today, but we are also looking at pump storage also equally. We also have a PLI for alternate cell chemistry, which 3 companies have already won. 2, I think, will install, and the commissioning is 2024 March or April. So all these things put together, I think we are going to be in a better place. Last year, I mean, this 2023 February, the cabinet already approved a VGF of 3,600 crores for battery storage with grid connected to accommodate our renewables. So all said and done, we will be in a better place. But to conclude my answer, last 4 months, we had 3 bids of FDRE. 3 of them had to use storage, and our levelized tariff is lingering somewhere between 4 to 5. So we are at almost at the verge of achieving the grid parity with storage and renewables.
Right. As far as policy is concerned, because that's going to be paramount in some years, can you share a wish list or a roadmap as far as policymakers are concerned, vis-a-vis the corporates plus the general public?
Okay, so I would say a lot of good work has been done on the policy front in last 10 years. And most of the states and the central government, the policies are really conducive. And that has helped with this growth of renewables in last decade. Now, as it often happens in our country, it's a democratic system, and electricity is a state subject. So we often have a case of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So for example, many states have now come up with a kind of generation tax on solar in various forms, whatever it is called, Harit Urja, cess, or whatever. And so much so that Ministry of Power even issued a notification in June directing all the states that this kind of taxation or cess or whatever, in whatever form it is unconstitutional and should be removed. But still there is probably going to be a gap. Some states will act on that, some won't act, some would take some other. So that's where we get stuck. And this has been a constant state of affairs in India, where at state levels, the policies always, we say in industry, have a cycle. So there would be 3 to 4 years of achhe din, and after that, there would be some roadblock. So that's where the investments get stuck. That's where the incoming financiers, the international financing agencies, they see risks. That's where the cost of financing goes up. That's where the projects get delayed. So probably we as a nation have to be more clear on our policy. Okay, you want to take a decision and stick with it for 5 years. So policy clarity is much more important than having a policy flip-flop where certain benefits come and go. That's primarily what we need to do as a nation.
I think I agree with Rajiv. From a policy perspective, I think we are among the best in the world. The problem, as he said, electricity being a concurrent subject, is in the action, and that is differentiated among states. One major thing that I see is that the traditional distribution utilities feel that it is a loss in revenue whenever there is someone going on a captive solar, right? So how to make it a win-win situation for them through certain actions, that is one. The transmission entity, I mean, while they have their own plans, how do they be pushed to make sure that whenever a plant is coming in their vicinity, that system is also ready before that or alongside. So all these action level items need a lot of trust and ownership at the state level. From a policy level, I think we are very well, and as it was earlier mentioned, like schemes like PLI, which are customized to India, they are actually fantastic. We just need to strengthen the action part.
We've heard about corporates earning carbon credit.
Yes,
all of that is
yes.
in place.
But you will not see a lot of government institutions earning that. That is where I think we need to have a lot of strength. But I would say there are a lot of people...
Which is ironic though. Because
but there are a lot of ideas coming from the government. But the problem is, at a leader level, the thought is there. How can we percolate it to the lowest guy in that institution to think that I have to contribute to clean, to reduce the carbon footprint of my organization? That is something which needs a lot of thrust.
When I have 3 simple points on the wish list, which is otherwise a much longer one based on our interactions day to day. But the first one is the DRE. We need a more direct push to ensure that we focus on spread as well as we are focusing on growth. RPO is just the first step, but we need to have a dedicated approach on each of the 4 segments, on the rooftop, building integrated, agri PV, as well as other distributed applications that can help. Second one is, which is sort of encompassing both of their comments, is on resolving the state-central conflict. As a federation, we have already submitted our request number of times to create something like an electricity council in the lines of GST council, so that you sit and discuss and finalize and sort issues on a platform which is official and authentic. Third, of course, is 3 C's: clarity, certainty, and comprehensiveness on policies. I second the argument that we have the best policy ecosystem, if I may say so. But to accelerate and to go to the target that we need to be more cautious and judicious while we are taking the next steps.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for all our panelists, Mr. Rajiv Agrawal, Subramaniam Pulipaka, and Mr. Mohammad Saif. Thank you all for being here at the Times of India Right to Excellence Energy Summit 2023. Thank you all. Thank you.
So a great discussion there, Sushant. So I think more or less everybody agreed that policy-wise we are in place, but then the actionable, the plan has to be different and needs to be worked upon. So ladies and gentlemen, as we navigate the contours of sustainability and responsible resource utilization, it is my pleasure to invite you to our next panel discussion, a crucial exploration into the realm of circular economy and waste management. Our esteemed panelists for this discussion are experts who have made significant strides and in reshaping the way in which we perceive and handle resources. Now let me invite right now our distinguished panelists to join us on the stage for an enlightening discussion on circular economy and waste management. We have Dr. Swati Sharma, consultant with Terry University and IGNOU. Please put your hands together for her. Next is Richie B. Stephen, Senior Standards Specialist, ULSE. And Pratyush Sinha, Vice President, Special Projects, Loham Cleantech.
Right. I think this promises to be another fascinating session because it's on waste hierarchy. So I'm going to start with you, ma'am, Dr. Swati, and you told me that basically you deal with e-waste. Now, ये बड़ा important है. हमारा phone होता है या laptop होता है. I haven't thrown away my last 3 laptops or my last 4 phones because I'm concerned about my data, right? So a lot of thought has to be put in how to manage e-waste, recycle it, or to even, get rid of it.
So e-waste is a very big challenge to all of us. The way e-waste is growing, the penetration of telephone, mobile phones, laptops, even in the rural areas, is exceeding. It's good on one hand because now people have access to communication. But on the other hand, when these things get obsolete because of new technology, if they are not functioning well, it adds a lot of waste to the stream. So if we see e-waste has a lot of hazardous impacts also, right? And if it is not handled in the formal sector, it can have huge health, environmental impacts. And also, it loses on the precious metals which are there. We will be surprised to see that it has some component of gold. It has some component of copper. So whatever, if we just throw it in waste, it's very difficult to recover it. So we are losing on the precious metals. So I know that it must be recycled, and I also know there are recyclers, and the data of the recyclers is available on the pollution board sites, right? But everyone is not aware. And even if we know, getting connected with these kind of recyclers is a challenge. If I have to dispose my phone, I feel really worried about the data I have, as we said. So because of a lot of cybercrime also happening, it is becoming challenging. So the system, if we see, there are PROs, producer responsibility organizations. It is part of EPR, extended producer responsibility. So they have these kind of agencies who can collect the phone, and they're sure that all the data will be removed, and then only it will move on to recycling. But still, giving off the phone, you don't feel that surety. So it's important when policy is there, infrastructure is there, people participation should also be there. So we need to understand that there is a gap in terms of maybe knowledge, maybe in terms of the attitude, or maybe in terms of the enabling environment. So when we are framing these kind of policies or the systems, we must keep in mind that people are very sensitive, and it's not easy to change behaviors. So we need to keep in mind that behavioral change component must be part of any such action. And I think if we look into a larger vision, then it can help in a better way.
Richie, about recyclability, material selection, because that's very, very important.
So recyclability, how do we measure it, and how do we say that we are circular? So we need to have a metrics, we need to have a method in place. So to have those methods and metrics in place, so there could be various metrics. There could be how the material is produced, and then how the material is used, and then finally how it is being recycled. Not only that, there can be other impacts from the material. There could be social impacts, there could be environmental impacts, impacts on the how well that material can be recycled, on how it was used. And so to measure all these impacts, we need to have a measurement method or metric or a metric in place. So definitely there are various metrics. There are one metrics which is used by our organization, which talks not only talks about the flow of the material, but also the impact of the flow. So it where it analyzes the various stages the material has gone through, the various supply chains, and the not only it should not only be limited to our organization. The measurement of the material or the product that is there in our economy, it should be measured with your first supplier, and also with the entire value chain it has been through, and so that is how we would reach to a metrics or to how we to measure circularity. So right now, currently the global economy is around 8.6% of circularity, which definitely states that there is a huge potential to reduce our waste and reduce the burden on the natural resources that we have right now. and use the resources that we currently have in the economy.
Talking about the waste, Pratyush, would it be completely unfair of me to say that waste management is, most parts is a disaster in this country because we don't have the infrastructure. We don't even, I think, have the proper education that is required to take care. You know about overflows at landfills. Would you, just elaborate on that? How big of a challenge that really is, waste management, really at the grassroots level?
Sure. So waste management typically has multiple stages. The first stage is collection, and then you have transport. So right now, one of our biggest challenges, at least in e-waste, as ma'am mentioned, is collection. There are, that's one challenge, and then you have transport. Transport is primarily, there are two challenges. One is economic. If your material doesn't have sufficient salvage value, then logistics becomes a significant portion of the overall processing cost, and that reduces the recyclability, which would mean materials that are not very valuable or waste that doesn't contain a lot of valuable material should be processed locally. There should be decentralized capability. We might have to forego some of the economies of scale over there. On the other hand, material that has valuable content in it, like batteries or even e-waste, can be processed in large hubs, maybe not very centralized, but reasonably centralized. So, a strategy has to take care of that. Coming specifically to my ballpark, which is around batteries and e-waste, there are a few issues over there. In e-waste, at least, the problem has been that we have given out licenses to a lot of e-waste players, but over time, what has happened is the formalization of the sector has not happened because we haven't had champions come up who can sort of drive the collection networks and drive, the transport networks. So that is something that's happened because I feel there's lack of audit. The audits are not stringent enough. So that has to be happen. And on the other side, from the point of view of customer, as mentioned around cybersecurity, there have to be some data erasure standards or data deletion standards, which I believe are there in other countries. We need to bring those in as well so that the customers are safe. They're safe in the knowledge that the data is not getting misused. Coming to the battery side, I would say we're still in the nascent stage. So we need to learn from what has happened earlier with respect to e-waste or other sorts of waste and make sure that doesn't happen, which means there have to be very stringent guidelines around transportation, on storage, and there has to be very stringent mass balance maintained, which becomes a data gathering activity. It can be decentralized through use of protocols, or it can be centralized by a body like with standards coming from BIS and implementation by, say, CPCB or some other body. But what we need to ensure is whatever material is coming into the system is tracked at every stage. So for example, if you are a producer putting a battery out, you need to put in a percentage of each kind of material in your battery. And then when the material comes to the recycler, they have to say that they got X amount of battery and then in a very rigorous manner calculate what is the amount of material that has come out so that we know what is the actual level of circularity in the economy. That is something not there. And what we would also propose is if it's possible to have HS code extensions for recycled materials so that it can do two things. One is we'll know what is the level of recyclability and it will become easier to calculate that just through GST filings. And the other is it will also help incentivize usage of recycled material. So for example, battery waste management rules they have, they say that there should be 15% recycled material, but how do you track that? We believe this can be a solution for it. So yeah, this is around waste management. Happy to take more questions.
Right. No, so we just spoke about getting to the 500 gigawatts mark by 2030. Being the massive country that we are, given our population, how far behind are we on waste management? Because, I don't think we can put a metric to it, but I'll say pretty behind.
So I'll say, according to the reports, so if we see e-waste recycling, what is happening, the world average is around 17%. And India is only 4% in the formal sector. Informal sector we have, but it doesn't go into the circular economy then.
So we are,
quite behind.
Massively behind on management in e-waste management overall. So yeah, Rishi, you want to add in?
Yeah. So, for management of waste like batteries, there are currently the government is currently working on a policy where the batteries from the electric vehicle would be refurbished and be used in the energy storage systems in renewable energy. So that is the approach we should take. We should not talk about just filling up the landfills. We should be able to use our products and reuse it again, so that our recyclability is there. And definitely there could be challenges when we'll do that, because there could be different batteries, there could be different manufacturers, chemistries. But how to tackle that would definitely the government needs to work towards.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, just to address the point around refurbishment, last year we had a peak power deficit of 9.1 gigawatt, which was around 4% of our peak power load. What this tells me is, as we have more renewables coming in, there will be a lot of demand for storage, because what you do right now is set up a diesel genset or something, and that's not something we want. So how do you have power backup, and how do you enable this in a sustainable and decentralized manner? So you will have to have solar installations everywhere, as the previous session also we discussed. And for that, you'll need storage. And we believe second life batteries are a very good source of storage. The costs are actually much lower than diesel genset. And I mean, that's something that the government should encourage. What that will require is obviously very stringent testing standards and data sharing standards, so that we know, so that refurbishment becomes possible. You know what happened to the battery and what is going to happen to the battery. You can calculate state of health, remaining life basis that, and you can put the batteries in relevant applications basis that. So I think data sharing becomes important, and this can be based on a somewhat of a public goods model, similar to UPI, where there is a way or a protocol to share data. European Union is doing something like that with battery passport, and we should definitely look at that. And not just for batteries, but even for other sorts of waste. We should not create waste where there's none. So other sorts of products that are retired, if they can be reused, they should be.
But is there a system in place for this already? Because, obviously it hasn't touched all of us, general public-wise. So is there a system in place, or is there a proposal in place?
We are doing repurposing. We have a few hundred megawatt hours worth of batteries that we have put out. And we believe that as more and more EV batteries come back, this number is only going to shoot up. So just to give you an example, by 2030, the Niti Aayog estimates that around 90 gigawatt hours of batteries will get retired, and probably around 30 to 40% of them will get into reuse. And our actual demand for 2030 is around 160 gigawatt hours. So, I mean, you can meet around 25% of your requirement or 20% of your requirement through repurposing itself. So there is certainly a need for this. There are bodies that have taken cognizance. So BIS, for example, is coming up with some standards. All ministries have looked into it, but I still think that a lot more can be done. Especially there has to be some sort of coherent approach, aligned approach from different organizations. So another potential application could be EV chargers. So EV chargers typically require a lot of power at once, especially if you are doing fast charging, which means that you will need some sort of a system in between to smooth the power flow, because you can't suddenly take so much power from the grid. Batteries again become a very good middleman in that case. And so those are different kinds of applications that the different governments or different public bodies can look at. Maybe we can integrate it with smart cities. There are lots of opportunities. It's just that different people have to think how it can be done, and there has to be an alignment around it.
We spoke about this, the disposal of e-waste and how even the experts are handling it. You told me that, they're just dipping into H2SO4. Can you elaborate on that? Because
yeah, that is primarily happening in the informal sector. I mean, if you see in the formal sector, they have proper provision. It's like a industry I had visited long back. There's an industry called set up in Bangalore long back in 2005 and 6. It was the first industry set up on e-waste recycling, and they did not had permission from government to, extract the precious metals. So they were doing dismantling and then doing segregation. So there are industries, and these industries are not only, adding on to the SDG number 12, but also contributing to other SDGs. I would say SDG number 5, which is basically on your gender empowerment. So this industry basically trained females of the neighboring community how they can dismantle all the electronic waste and do the segregation, do the sorting, everything. So it was addressing SDG number 1 also, giving employment, also addressing SDG number 6, 5, 6. You can list any SDG, you can link it with that. So when we are doing it in a formal sector, we are not only protecting environment, we are also looking into the economic context, also looking into the social context. So we are onto a sustainability model, and that is what is required. There are a couple of them already established, but the problem with them, they do not get a huge amount so that recycling become more lucrative for them, so that they carry on the business. So connecting and getting the load for recycling is a very big challenge. So that has to be worked on.
And Richie, talk about the closed loop systems. A lot of companies are being encouraged, and a lot of them are already implemented closed loop systems already. So do you think we need some policy on this as well for maybe every company to try and do that? Although it is a big challenge it depends on the kind of work or business that you are in.
Yeah, not only policy. There are various, as I told you, there are various methods. So each company is following different method. However, but there's no benchmark. So that is where standards would come in place. This is what I think should be in place. A standard should be in place where all the companies should follow the similar metrics, so that they can be ranked, or they could be so that we can arrive at a common circularity index, so that so we know that this company where the company is lacking and where it can improve. So
so certainly from a policy point of view, I think we have done some of the hard work. So for example, there was a plethora of waste management rules that came out last year, but I think now what is required is one, figuring out the details. So with respect to battery, for example, we can recycle around 20,000 tons of battery every year. And there are other players coming into the market. So there is capacity in the country. Now, what remains is how do we make it more efficient? How do we match demand to supply? So for example, there have to be details around handling and storage of batteries, or handling and storage of other waste. That clarity has to come. How do you handle production waste? That clarity has to come. How do you ensure that how do you implement, for example, requirement of 15% usage? That clarity has to come. So a lot of detailing has to be done. As a high-level framework, I think the policies are in place. Detailing has to be done, and then implementation has to be done.
That's the most important. So implementation on ground, that's what I'm asking. How far behind are we? And that roadmap we need to clarify.
Certainly. So I think we do need to build more capacity in our SPCBs and at CPCB as well. And also we'll need more subject matter expertise to understand the nuances of every field, because there are a lot of trade-offs and competing policy objectives that are involved. So that requires detailed understanding and taking cognizance that we are deliberately taking these routes. So I think that is something that needs to be built.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Dr. Swati Sharma, Richie B. Stephen, and Pratyush Sinha. Thank you all for joining us at the Right to Excellence Energy Summit 2023.
It's the majestic grid, it's the majestic grid, it's the majestic grid. It's the majestic rhythm, you should keep it up.
get a mic in the audience? We have?
Mike.
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Harinder. I am from Faridabad. And I am first of all delighted that the subject which is going on over here, so there is a lot of other things which you will feel cherished all among here. The thing is that we are having collaboration with Israel for the battery refurbishment. And now we are talking over there on the very surface level, while we are already deep dive into that from last 6 years. And just to give the eye-opening remarks on this one, the thing is that Government of India has already made this battery waste management rules in 2022, and first time in India, which I am doing from last 6 years, the refurbishment of the batteries has been well defined under this rule. And even the complete roadmaps has been already defined for all categories. But irony of the market is that these rules are not, even awareness is not there among the industries. And in spite of awareness, we all run with the stick only. They are not even having any fear factor in the industry. For example, I am just giving a live example. Like, for example, this Hooter is there. They are having a lot of UPS batteries are there. Even I will approach over there, even giving them these rules, regulations and all. In spite of that one, they are not willing to do that one. Why? Because they are having a lot of fear factors in that one. And in spite of giving my good footprints among my already gain into last 6 years in the all big MNCs and all over there, we are doing for solar, UPS, telecom and all, but telecom industry is not even touching upon this one in spite of everything. So the talking over here and discussing over here is very good, but practical things are very, very crude in while we are facing all those things. And in spite of that one, we have not given our steps back actually. So the thing is that wherever this subject is going on, so next time practical things which are already going on in the market, please put up that also so that people should know that this is already there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sir, to give you an, just to give you an idea, we have already put out a few tens of megawatt hours of refurbished battery in India. And as you mentioned, this is a bit of a new thing because the number of batteries have not come back. But the reason refurbishment will take root is not because of strictness, but because, I mean, there's a carrot and stick approach, and it will happen if there is an economic incentive to do that. And that will happen if you can provide residual value. And I think companies
I'll interrupt in between. That is not a incentivize of that one. Rather than that, the rule should come because we are calculating on the return on investment. Now it has to be changed into the return on environment. Until unless return on environment will not be there by the government, we cannot succeed into this one. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So it has to be both, and they have to be aligned together.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Just a suggestion. I mean, if we see SDG report, which comes every year by Niti Aayog, and they do reporting on all the SDGs. And SDG number 6, if we see, it talks about waste. So earlier it was, it is on water and sanitation. So earlier it was on use of toilets. Now it has moved on further. It talks about waste collections and Swachh cities, which are more. So maybe one indicator on batteries, collection and recycling. Collection is one part and recycling is another part. That could be added. And one indicator on e-waste collection and recycling. Once it is there in that document, it will push all the systems to make it more efficient.
Right. Thank you all once again. And we move on to the next. Put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, one more time for Pratyush Sinha, Ruchi B. Stephen, and Dr. Swati Sharma.
Thank you so much. So a lot of challenges we do have as of now for sure, but I think one thing that we know for sure is communication to the grassroots levels, which needs to happen. Now, transitioning seamlessly from our discussions on a circular economy and waste management, we now turn our attention to a fundamental aspect that underpins the sustainable development narrative, the policy framework for sustainable development. This panel discussion aims to unravel the intricate web of policies shaping our journey towards a sustainable future. Let's delve into the heart of the matter and welcome our distinguished panelists to shed light on the policy framework and sustainable development. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our esteemed panel for this vital conversation. Anujesh Dwivedi, partner Deloitte India. Put your hands together for Anujesh Dwivedi. Next we have Nitin Zamre, COO, the InfraVision Foundation. Karthik Ganesan, Fellow and Director, Research Coordination, CEEW. And Sunil Dahia, Analyst, Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air.
Thank you. Right. Policy framework for sustainable development. Now, this is, again, a very fascinating subject. So let's just get all the opening comments in first, right? Anujesh, we're going to start with you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the theme of this event, and I love the opportunity to be here as a part of this panel. I understand since we are talking more about energy here, I would split the entire discussion into one energy sector, how we are or the country is thinking of achieving sustainability or contributing towards environmental sustainability through the actions being taken in the energy sector, particularly in the electricity sector. And we know by 2070, when we target to achieve net zero, the overall share of electricity in the energy mix of the country is going to be 50% from the 18% it is today. And therefore, all the actions that are being taken in the electricity sector, energy sector are paramount. Whether it is the 500 gigawatt renewables, whether it is going for wind, or whether it is looking at technologies to address the intermittency of renewable energy, all of these will play an important role. The second paradigm I want to add is sustainability in the industrial sector. While electrification itself is going to be a major contributor towards energy side of sustainability for the industries as they put more and more processes on electricity-based However, there are certain industrial processes which are not easy to electrify, and we term those as hard to abate sectors. And there, green hydrogen and other new technologies are going to play a major role. So that is the second subsector. The third subsector is transport. So achieving sustainability in transport is going to be a major challenge. It is not just about EVs and urban transport. We also have long-haul transport, flights, aircrafts. You have all the waterways. How do we make it sustainable in terms of reducing the carbon footprint? All of these are very, very important. And there are not only these three pillars of sustainable development that we think of in terms of carbon footprint. There are other sectors also which have substantial carbon footprint. Things like agriculture. I'm very glad that we recently introduced the new program called as Green Credit Program. It really goes into other sectors which were typically not touched by the way we were looking at sustainability. So that is the perspective I wanted to share with you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Nitin.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, having me here, and very interesting topic, including the earlier two sessions as well. I think as mentioned earlier, we talked about the sectors in which we have sustainability. I think just to add to that, we also have some frameworks that we have been following for the last quite a few years, probably I think 13, 14 or 15 years. We have, if I look at it, the way I look at it is that you have what is called NAPCC, National Action Plan for Climate Change, right? That's the kind of umbrella framework that we have, which where we have defined, or we have kind of defined frameworks for each of the sectors in which we are trying to deal with the climate change, which deals with electricity, as you mentioned, on the supply side. But we have a very significant program that has been going on the consumption side through the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. So we have taken some very good steps in terms of how do you increase the efficiency of energy consumption, especially on the appliances side, right? So that comes under the NAPCC. Following on from there, we also have each state having its own state action plans on climate change. So I think there is a framework that we have adopted which has given us good results over the last few years. And there are always two sides of looking at anything, right? If you look at it from where we want to go, I think we are quite far behind. But if you look at it from where we have come from, I think we have made really good progress. The other thing I think is in terms of transport, which is a very significant, sector that contributes to the climate change in India, and because obviously it is predominantly based on fossil fuel and very large scale. I think there the challenge is far more complex because there, the agencies that are involved, the users that are involved, and the providers that are involved are so diverse and complex. I think that adds to the complexity of how do you deal with those situations. For example, if you just look at the replacement, or of adding, say, a very highly comfortable transportation element of metro. We have seen that significant improvement happening in cities like Delhi, and we now have, about 22 or 25 cities which are currently either operating or under construction metro. But the problem there is that may not be the best solution given the characteristics of the cities. So then you have to look at, whether this is the right solution that you're, even though environmentally, and sustainably it may be the best thing to do, but the cost-benefit analysis doesn't allow you. So therefore, you have to have different solutions for sustainable transportation in smaller cities, right? So I think under the framework that we have adopted, there are multiple opportunities for us. We have shown the results, and I think as we keep progressing, which is what we have done, we have kept improving. And I think that's the right path and the right way to do. So I see a lot of potential and a lot of promise in the way we are targeting our targets by 2030.
When you say transport, an image of a plane comes to mind. And then I say, can that really be possible with renewable energy? I mean, sky's the limit, but let's see in the future.
For the aeroplanes, you're saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I thought of, when you mentioned it. But obviously, right now, I don't think we are thinking that far. But still, yes, Karthik.
First off, thank you for having me here. So I think a lot has already been said. So let me just focus on two things. One, I feel a big driver for our sustainability movement will be the industrial policies surrounding new industries, right? I mean, a lot of people might say that, we have passed the world of industrial policy setting, but it's very much alive and kicking, and a lot of economies have taken to it. The Inflation Reduction Act in the US is very much an example. And in the case of India, for instance, the PLI scheme that's been announced, whether it's for solar cell manufacturing or for advanced cell chemistry batteries, both sort of suggest that there is an incentive that the industry needs to be able to pull together what India needs for the future, whether it's the energy system or otherwise, to be able to manufacture it within. And that's going to be an important driver of whether we end up adopting these or not. Because what we're seeing currently is that energy security, and to the extent that you're able to build an industry base that can continue to have value add within the economy, to create jobs for the burgeoning population that's coming into the labor force, is equally important. So we can't leave that outside, and for that reason, having an industrial policy that supports these new industries is very important, as important as the deployment of the technologies on based on imported components, right? Which has been the sort of the mantra so far, because obviously it was economical to do it, but it will not remain that way going forward. And I think the second is to try and drive voluntary action. I mean, Anujesh already talked about this green credit scheme, but for instance, there is definitely a chord that the Life Mission has struck with a lot of people overseas who see that the inertia that is there for action in many sectors stems from that disconnect between what we want on a daily basis and what sustainability requires on a daily basis. And I think this Life scheme definitely, or the Life Mission, so to say, it's not a scheme, it's a mission, has the potential, and I think the Green Credits program was in some way to monetize that and to showcase that there is an intrinsic value to being more sustainable in your outlook. So how we communicate life to the masses of this country, as well as try and sell that as a concept overseas, right, to change what our aspirations are, I think that will play a very important role in how we drive sustainability. Yeah.
Sunil.
Again, thank you for having me here. We have heard that there are really good policy mechanisms in place in India for the renewable energy sector, for the waste recycling and even if we talk about industrial air pollution and many other things. The problem is that one, these rules are not implemented. Second, when we look at the sector comprehensively, there we see that there is a bit of conflict between subsectors within a sectors. And renewable energy or electricity for that matter, while on the one side we are doing significantly well on renewable energy, we have really great plans. Some of it has also started being implemented on ground, and I fully agree with the first group of panelists where they said that 500 gigawatt is really achievable. That it is, because we don't need to install 50 gigawatt starting from today till 2030. Every year we can start with 15, 16 gigawatt this year, and with cumulative or CAGR of about 25%, which is expected to achieve those targets, we can systematically increase that capacity every year we can achieve. But the problem lies in the larger planning process, where on the one side we are doing really good on renewable energy, on the other side the coal or thermal sector lacks clarity, and there have been mixed signals being sent over last 5 years, more particularly where we had seen financing, both public as well as private financing, drying up for the private sector or new coal-based power plants. But over last 2-3 years, we have seen that there is this period during the summer and monsoon time when there is a lot of discussion about power deficit. A lot of people build a narrative around saying that there is lack of coal in India, there is lack of coal-based capacity generation. But if you look at it, it's more or less a logistical issue which we have faced, wherein there was coal mining, enough coal mining capacity available, enough coal being available at the mines as well, but evacuation of that coal and reaching the power plants was not happening. So, sadly, such events have been used to build new narratives, where right now we are hearing that India would add about 70 gigawatt of new coal-based capacity. And that's where I think we need more clarity at a larger sector level, wherein we just don't say that renewable energy is doing great, we have great policy and we'll do great. We have limited finances and we have to put them in the choice which we make for future, and it cannot be both. It should be more efficient.
Right. Since we have 4 industry experts over here at the Right to Excellence Energy Summit with the Times of India, can we just discuss a practically possible, actionable plan, at least till 2030? Let's just see 2030, policy-wise, and even green investment-wise, infrastructure-wise, technology-wise. Please feel free to add. Yeah.
Can I go first, maybe? Yeah. So, there's a lot of talk that happens overseas about the need for carbon markets, right? It might seem a far cry from what we have in place today, but let's be very clear that to address the inequity issue that we see in India, vis-a-vis what the rich consume versus what the poor consume and their contribution, a carbon market is necessary to level the playing field and also to create a financing mechanism that will help put in place the necessary infrastructure to help the developmental needs of the poorer sections, right? So let's take the example, for instance, of just the basket of commodities that people in this particular room consume. You talked about flying, right? In the climate change world that we hear today, flying should be anathema, right? Because, the emissions associated with it are phenomenal. But are you paying a specific price for basically undertaking that flight? You're not. At the same time, there's somebody, in a rural area who's struggling to basically meet their mobility requirements because the availability of public transport is not there. So what if you were to say, basically have price carbon, right? And you could start with, what you might deem luxury. Again, those are all subjective terms, but you could certainly have a set of things which are basically priced from a carbon emissions perspective, because you see that they're consumed by a certain category, and you then have a way in which you create a pool where that money goes in, and not into the Consolidated Fund of India, but to be able to then satisfy the infrastructure requirements for the poor. It could be, for instance, ensuring that there's payment for bus services that are provided in rural areas. That will ensure that people there aren't taking to private transport. So even though, the discussion's not quite there, there is a carbon market that's happening for industrial purposes today. I think we have to broaden the scope of that, because that's the only way we will get the rich to realize that there is a cost to the consumption that we're undertaking, and then there is a mechanism for you to then transfer that revenues the government is making to the poor, because I think it's equally an issue of addressing the inequity as well. Yeah.
So what Karthik is suggesting, that basically when you, next time you go out to buy a Gucci bag or a, a high designer, some expensive an item, you think about, that you have to save a little bit for the carbon emissions also that you do. That is also a system in place. But any other, as I said, a roadmap to 2030, what needs to be implemented, and even as infrastructure, technology-wise and policy-wise?
Yeah. So I think what he talked about, the example that he talked about was specific to, let's say, transport. The people who are flying have to pay something extra, so
premium,
that the people can, let's say, at the ground level can have more sustainable transport. I think there are inefficiencies in the system that are there at the ground level itself. Forget about connecting flying air with, having sustainable mobility on ground. I think if you look at our cities, the whole, nexus of the road space that is being occupied by the cars, which are polluting, the real estate that is being occupied by the same cars when it goes for parking, right? All of that is not getting captured. These people must pay because they are polluting, they are capturing the prime real estate, right? They have to pay so that it can fund the, public transport system in a city. So this whole point of polluters having to pay, the beneficiaries having to pay, I think it's a principle that has to apply to all the activities. Then only we'll be able to divert funds from people who are consuming things which are not as sustainable as they are for, let's say, larger good, as public transport as an example. That applies to your energy as well. In energy, all of us know the losses that are there in our system. If I'm not mistaken, they are still at around 35% at a national level, which is phenomenal loss. So every unit of electricity that you're putting in the system at an aggregate level, you're getting only 0.65 at the end of it, right? And who bears that loss? It's a system, it's the user who is going to bear that loss. So all these inefficiencies, I think, need to be tackled first, making sure that you are actually doing things which are going to give you benefit there itself. Right? Similarly, just to give one more example, we're talking about, let's say, renewable energy. How do you make sure, and I think this point was raised in the first session as well, how do you make sure that you are actually giving energy at the end of the distribution channel, which is your rooftop, right? Yeah. Yeah. How do you do that? Because the benefits are enormous, right? How do you make sure that the utilities are actually welcoming that rather than trying to shut it down, which is the case today, right? So I think these are all things that really need to be tackled first if you want to make that change happen, at a much quicker pace.
Right. We spoke about being green policemen in some sense, in a sense of the word. Then also about reaching the masses. Education is very important. What about green financing also and investment?
I want to touch upon
Sure. Please do.
Point, and I have two things that I want to talk about. First, I was reading somewhere that the banks, Indian banks, have a higher digital maturity than the global or the international banks working in India. And that's so fabulous. Yeah. And we know the success of the banking industry, how it has gone down to the grassroots level. A similar revolution is required in the energy sector and the electricity sector. If this sector has to take everyone along and implement all of these policy initiatives that we are talking about, we need that digital infrastructure in place. Not only the utility needs to become smart, it has to interact with every stakeholder in a smart way. And it is beyond utility. We are talking about individuals. Let us say an individual, everything is digital today. 70–80% of the expenses we are making is through a digital interface, UPI or credit card. Can I know what is the carbon footprint of my purchase decisions? Yes, it can be calculated.
You need a UPI for a green or a carbon credit system.
Yes, maybe at an organization level, at an individual level, if we are able to sensitize people, it can go a long way. So entire digital infrastructure in the energy sector and the way people perceive everything related to energy and sustainability could be a big game changer. The second thing I was thinking is, I was looking at the number of policy initiatives that has come out in the energy sector in the last 2 years. If you compare that with the last 7–8 years, possibly the last 2 years will surpass. You see one policy after the other, whether it is PLI, whether it is battery energy storage, whether it is green hydrogen mission. So many things are coming, every 2-3 months there is a new policy action. And I think, we should remain that agile. If we have to achieve such big goals by 2030, and we are not coming from a vantage point of a developed country where, our economy is decoupled from the energy end use. Our carbon emission is at 2 metric ton per capita, vis-a-vis 14 metric ton in other countries. So obviously we will need energy. We will need to add coal. And all of those things will happen. But policy agility to take cognizance of the developments that are happening worldwide, because today we are not waiting for 10 years to adopt what has been implemented elsewhere. We are beginning to implement maybe at the same time or before it is really implemented in the world. So agility is going to be another major thing that the policy has to continue to demonstrate.
Sunil? Yeah.
I think two basic things which we need to really focus on till 2030. One is that there needs to be a better policy synchronization between different sectors. And when I say this, it's energy sector as well as transportation. There was a really great example given that all these 75 metros which are being constructed are not really needed. I'll give you an example of Patna Metro, which is a 10-kilometer or to 15-kilometer stretch. The city entirely is that long in terms of straight line. That city is investing 14,000 crores to build a metro system. That 14,000 crore could have got more than 3,000 buses on road. And that would have removed maybe many more cars. And that kind of system would be much more economical for a person living there in different socioeconomic classes, and would cater to larger distances. So we need that kind of transportation policy linked to the air pollution national clean air program which we have, and that in a way should link back to the larger national electricity policy as well as national energy policy. One is that. The other thing which I feel is the implementation of these synchronized policies. That's where we lack. We know that air pollution is a big issue in the country right now, and the only two main factors for air pollution is one, emissions, and second, meteorology. We can't control meteorology, we can control emissions. And to control emission, we need to have we need to understand how much are we emitting and how does that go down to ensure we have clean air. And that can only be done when we have sectoral caps. We know that this is how much we can emit in 5 years or 10 years from now, and to be able to understand when do we achieve that cap and how do we reduce it from there so that we can effectively have air quality benefits. And these air quality benefits will only come when we change the energy landscape, when we change the transportation landscape, when we move people rather than cars in the city, when we consume energy for the need and not for the grid. And energy efficiency plays a major role. I think that's where I'll stop. Thank you.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for all our esteemed panelists. Mr. Anujesh Dwivedi, Nitin Zamre, Karthik Ganeshan, and Sunil Dhaya. Thank you so much. Round of applause.
Discussion there. Now, as we draw the curtains on this enlightening evening dedicated to exploring the frontiers of sustainable development, we have the distinct honor of concluding with a fireside chat. This is going to be a quick fireside chat featuring a luminary in the field, Mr. Narendra Taneja. Mr. Taneja, a research fellow at the Oxford Institute of Energy Studies and chairman of Independent Energy Policy Institute, brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discourse. His insights have been pivotal in shaping the energy landscape globally. So we'll have the privilege of delving into his perspectives on the current state and future trajectories of energy policies, sustainable practices, and the evolving dynamics in the world of energy. Over to you, Sushant.
Thank you. Right. Resource distribution, dependency. Right, sir. The global shift towards renewable energy how is it impacting traditional geopolitical power dynamics?
Well, good question. When you look at the energy landscape globally, and you have to look globally because energy is a global business, and then you find that you have got about 1.4, 1.5 billion people living a rather comfortable life. We call them global north. Some people call them rich countries, some call them developed countries. And then we have about 6.7 billion people living, in kind of conditions which can vary, depends on who you're talking with, can be described kind of energy challenged. Many of them are actually energy poor. No, don't use the word third world. There's nothing like third world. They are developing countries, they are emerging economies like India and Indonesia, even Bangladesh are doing very well. I mean, these third world, fourth world were terms by, the global north.
That is the term that you use.
Well, not anymore. We call global south. So we have 6.7 billion people. And in order to progress, develop, first and foremost, what do we need? We cannot progress without energy. And we need energy, call it petrol, call it diesel, call it fossil fuels, coal, renewables, atomic, hydro, call by any name, but we need energy. Now, look at the reality today. The reality is that, bulk of the energy is, not, of course, consumed by the rich countries, but the most important thing is that the global narratives, what is energy, what is climate change, what is energy transition, what is renewable, who basically are the authors of these definitions? What is climate change? Who decides it? In New Delhi, in Jakarta, in Dhaka, Islamabad, Accra? No, they decide in the global north. They say, look, this is climate change. This is climate threat. This is what it is. So all the global narratives in terms of energy, in terms of fossil fuels, in terms of renewables, in terms of energy transition, and all that are actually authored by global north. And they expect countries like in the global south, home to 6.7 billion people, including India, to just follow them. So to answer your question, my argument is that, fine, in 2023, I refuse to accept it. I'm going to develop my own definition, at least participate in building the definition, what is energy transition? Energy transition from Norway or Germany may mean giving up on fossil fuels over the next 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. But for me, I live in India, I've got 70 crore people who live below energy poverty line, who are kind of need more energy. I need to grow because I still have a large number of people who are poor. And therefore, for me, energy transition means I need 40 years, I need 50 years. And which means that, I'm going to give a major push for renewable energy, which I've already done as India. In fact, India is doing better than most developed countries. But in terms of, if you want me to give up on coal, which is the backbone of my energy security, sorry, I can't do it tomorrow morning. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to take my own time. I'm going to work on my own calendar. The same goes for nuclear. The same goes for oil. The same goes for natural gas. If you have your own definition, and welcome, please, we respect that. But when it comes to energy transition in India, including, this green energy and everything, is going to happen in India because I need it. Climate crisis is real. Global warming is real. I'm a densely populated country, so I need energy transition ASAP. But it's going to happen on my terms. It's going to happen with Indian characteristics. So when it comes to the global high table on all these issues, it's important that countries like us, the Republic of India, we get a bigger size, we play a bigger role. Right now the situation is they write the definition, they set the direction, and many of us, including many of us in this city called New Delhi, just follow them blindly without questioning it. No, we need to question it. When we meet in COP28 in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and UAE, we need to question it. In Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, both the places, I was in Abu Dhabi 10 days ago, exactly discussing this. They want to phase out or phase down coal. Hey, coal is the backbone of my energy security. I import 86% of my requirement of oil. I import 56% of my requirement of natural gas. 80% of solar power cells equipment are still being imported, mostly from China. I import uranium. In terms of energy security, I may be the 5th largest economy in the world, or maybe the 3rd largest economy in the world on PPP basis, but I'm most vulnerable. What do I do? And coal is the only source of fuel that gives me energy security that I need. In 1971, when we were facing the Bangladesh war, there were two companies, two Western companies. They stopped selling oil to India, saying that you listen to a Western country, a big Western country, or we will not sell oil to India. And they stopped. 2-3 years after that, Indira Gandhi nationalized both the companies. One is now called Bharat Petroleum, the other is called Hindustan Petroleum. You see, so in terms of, we agree with it, climate crisis is real. Global warming, no, is global boiling, is real. But all the challenge that our Mother Earth is facing, thanks to these people who live in the global north, they are developed now. Now they are preaching what they are preaching. Why didn't they preach that 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Immediately after the Ukraine war, what happened? Immediately after Ukraine war, Germany started importing coal. They are still importing Russian gas. And they started building European energy fortress. An LNG ship that was going to Bangladesh was diverted, about to reach Chittagong in Bangladesh, was diverted to Germany. You know why? Because they offered more money. What is this? Just because you're rich? Just because many of us in countries like India listen to you because you look different, therefore you must be more knowledgeable, we follow them blindly. They say, this is the definition of energy transition. I said, yes, this is the definition. I'll organize a seminar on it. What is this? So time has come when we build our own narratives. We are 1.4 billion people on the planet. We are the 3rd largest economy in the world on PPP basis. And we have reached where we need to reach. And we need to lead other countries of the global south, and we also need to build our own narratives. I'm not saying that we cut ourselves off, no. All we're saying is that when they sit down and they say, what is energy transition, you also have to accept our signature there and our input. We are 7,000-year-old civilization. So we are not going to listen to you just blindly. Time has come for that. So whenever you read an article, or whenever you go to a conference in Western part of the world or wherever in the world, it's important when these things are given, hey, planet is boiling, and therefore India got to do this. Fine. But we will do what is important and what is needed. You know, we are doing all that we are doing in terms of renewables because we need it. We are a densely populated country. We want to see the welfare of our people. We want our children and grandchildren to be healthy. That's why we're doing it, not because we signed COP in Paris. No. So I think it's important for us to participate in building global narratives. Global narratives on energy, renewables, all monopolized by the global north. Time has come to have a discussion on that and say, let's do it in partnership. Of course we do it. Maybe you have better think tanks. Maybe you have better labs. But we are also 7,000-year-old civilization. Let's join hands and do it together. And we do it on behalf of our fellow countries in Africa, Latin America, South Asia, and everywhere. Time has come for that. Don't follow the definition or the concepts or the directions given by them blindly. Question it. And we must do what is good for India, what is good for eradication of poverty, what is good for eradication of energy poverty in the country. And when we meet in rooms like this, it's important that you think original and think Indian first and foremost.
Right. You spoke at length about, how we should not take or whatever they are preaching. Then a partnership also is a two-way street. Why not also call them out on the emissions that they are making, right? Because one thing is that, okay, they've told you कि भाई आपकी देश में ऐसा हो रहा है, ये steps आप follow करें, इतना carbon footprint है. But we know for a fact that this first world or this global north, as you say, their emissions are as much as ours, maybe even more. So how do we also tackle that problem? Because it's a global responsibility.
Good question. You see, if you go up in the sky, 40 kilometers and up, all that you see in terms of, poisonous gases. All these are made in the West, made in the OECD countries, in the global north. Yes, they did that, and they are today called developed countries. Don't I have the right to do something? I'm not saying that we have the right to go and pollute further, but don't I have the right, for instance, to make sure that we can provide, best possible development for our people? Now, the thing is that, they need to do more. Whether it's, when you look at, for instance, let me give you an example of, climate finance. In Paris, and later on, they made commitment that they will mobilize, $100 billion every year for the developing countries. Did they walk the talk? They didn't. They didn't. Today, in fact, they owe $1.2 trillion to the developing countries. I have been personally raising this question, that what about that? I have been in many meetings with the ministers and others, and they always change the topic. They say, oh, in fact, in a conference recently, climate minister of a very powerful European country, he tried to turn the table on me. He said, oh, you are now the 5th largest economy. You don't need that. You should be giving money to Pakistan, Bangladesh, and African countries. I said, look, per capita, I'm still $2,200 country. And per capita energy emissions, when it comes to India, we are among the lowest in the world. So we have to go by science. The problem is that, that we need to kind of do it together. In India, unfortunately, we sometimes, we don't question it. We sometimes think, sorry for me to putting this way, we sometimes think, oh, it's coming from Europe. And these guys have given me this and that, and now time has come for us to challenge it. All I'm saying is, at the same time, keep walking and working on renewables. Renewables is the future. My own sense is, in 2050, 2060 and beyond, India is going to be all about renewables and nuclear power. And nuclear, hopefully by that time, fusion, would have arrived in terms of commercial viability. And when that happens, hydrogen becomes a reality. And then I think, we will be not only this thing that we will be doing what is necessary for us, we will be among the leaders in the world. We want to be the leader. We want to lead the world in terms of energy, and we are capable. We are qualified. We have everything that you need to do that. So therefore, it's important we invest more in nuclear, we invest more in hydrogen, we invest more in solar, we invest more in, other sources of energy. At the same time, we invest more in oil, we invest more in gas, we invest more in coal, because these, fuels are going to be the kind of bridge energy, because we need them for next 20 to 30 years. But as we, for instance, start producing more renewable energy, we will slowly and slowly, gradually start saying them goodbye. But what they want us to do, they don't want an energy transition. By very definition, transition means something that happens gradually. That's the definition of Oxford University. But what do they expect us to do? Switch over, overnight, stop, coal-fired power plant. 68% of Mr. Batra is sitting here, he was chairman of Electricity Authority. 68% of electricity still come from, coal in India. Globally, 82% energy is still coming from traditional sources, globally. Globally. And now when in India, many people I talk globally, they say EV is EV. What is EV? Electric vehicle. All right, fine, done. Where electricity is going to come from? Where? That's the question. And then again, where lithium is going to come from, cobalt is going to come from, copper is going to come from, technology is going to come from. All these questions we need to ask. Instead of just saying, because we go to Europe, we go to Frankfurt, London, New York and all that, attend seminars there, we come back and start saying the same thing. We need to kind of think of what we need as the Republic of India, or we need as the Global South, what we need is Asia, what we need is Africa, what we need is Latin America. That's the thing, original thinking. And we need to work backward and design everything accordingly, starting from the policy. We don't need to make our policies to satisfy people sitting in Washington, D.C., or Berlin, or London, or Tokyo. No, we are home to 1.4 billion people. We will decide here. And you have to vacate space for us, on the global high table. Let me give you one example. Look very carefully. Look at United Nations. COP happening in COP28 is organized by the United Nations. What is the construct of the United Nations? Construct of the United Nations is that out of 5 permanent members of the Security Council, 3 are from Europe. 3. Russia, Britain, and France. What is the size of British economy today? Smaller than India. What is the size of French economy today? Smaller than India. What is the size of Russian economy? Smaller than India. And they are there on the high table, global high table. I'm not, because I'm India. What is this? We need justice. So therefore, it is important that we assert. But that said, at the same time, it's important we keep on pushing for renewables. Renewable is what we need because we are a densely populated country. Renewable is something that's going to help us eradicate energy poverty. If we have to take electricity to every single village across the country, of course, what we have done is great, but that's not enough. What we need is a kind of distributed solar revolution, so that every village, every panchayat can generate its own electricity, build its own kind of tariff system, and can be a kind of a solar swaraj, Suraj ka swaraj. They don't need anybody. They don't need the grid. If they have surplus, they will inject into the grid. That's kind of, we need to move in that direction. Renewable is what we need, keep on pushing. But at the same time, it's important we need oil, gas, and coal for next 20 to 30 years. And if anybody comes to Delhi and tries to teach us or lecture us and all that, we say, thank you very much, enjoy our food, we'll take care of our interests. You take care of your interests. Thank you.
I love the clarity, the vision. Thank you for this enlightening session, Mr. Taneja. Please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Narendra Taneja. Thank you for being here with us at the Right to Excellence Energy Summit 2023 by the Times of India. Thank you so much.
So absolutely fantastic. I think one takeaway that we have is, like anything else for energy transition as well, we, India, that is Bharat, need to build our own narratives. So thank you so much, Mr. Narendra Taneja, for sharing your profound insights, providing us with a capstone moment that leaves us with much to ponder. Thank you so much, Sushant, for moderating the evening. And ladies and gentlemen, as we reach the culmination of this enriching evening dedicated to the transformative power of sustainable energy, it is with gratitude and inspiration that we prepare to close the Energy Summit 2023. We thank our sponsors, Orient Electric and Media, for their contribution to this intellectual tapestry. We invite you to continue these conversations in a more informal setting. We kindly request all of you to join us for dinner. Wishing you all a wonderful evening.